Hey, it's Lee. Welcome to Business Problem Solved. This is another episode of the mini-series, Real People, Real Stories, Real Value. And I have a real person with real stories and real value to talk to today. Sally Chapman of Shine Coaching. How are you?
Oh, I'm really good. Hi, Lee. I'm brilliant today. Doing great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. But for those people who don't know who Sally Chapman is, then Sally, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've got to sit in that seat today.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do know who I am, but I don't know how I'm sitting in the chair. So who I am is I'm Sally Chapman. I live down in East Devon, beautiful East Devon, and I recently founded Shine Coaching this year, in the summer of this year. And how did I get to sit in the chair? I don't really know. I think I'm a real person. Yeah, I am a real person. I haven't had like a tragedy, or I haven't had an accident or illness, and I haven't overcome it. I've not done a rags to riches story. Totally gobsmacked that you wanted to speak to me, really. It all started, I think, that how I'm sitting in the chair is it all started back in April. So in April, I put a post out on LinkedIn asking people to share their podcast recommendations, because I love running. I run most mornings anyway, and I like to listen to a podcast, and it's a way of learning. So I put this thing out on LinkedIn saying, please give us your podcast recommendations, people. I have to say, Lee, nobody recommended your podcast, but I've listened to it since. And I love it. So I was recommended by, I think it was a lady called Sarah Rudder, who I'm connected with on LinkedIn, and she recommended Ricky Lock's Unlocked podcast.
Yep.
Now, and the first episode I listened to was Ricky talking to you, and you talked about your wonderful friend Chris, and the three things that he said that to lead a good and happy life, I think it was before that he passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
So forgive me if I get this wrong. So it was about being the best person you are, or being you, being surrounding yourself with people you love, and something about being short or limited or something like that. So
I will remember.
I know. It completely touched me. And I just reached out to you and connected with you on LinkedIn, and thankfully you accepted and said, yeah, that's great. So we accepted. And I think we had a brief conversation on LinkedIn. And then bizarrely, something else, we ended up being in the same WhatsApp group. So with the LinkedIn guru coach, extraordinaire, he's got this WhatsApp group. So we ended up being in the same group. We had a Zoom call. And then you said, do you want to be on my podcast?
And here we are. Yeah, here we are indeed. So that's our journey together. But what's your journey, Sally? So I guess what I'd really like to dig into here, because this mini series is Real People, Real Stories. What is your story? How have you got to where you are and doing what you do? Yeah, how have you got to where you are and doing what you do?
Well, how long you got? No, I will keep it really short. You've heard of, like, they talk about these squiggly careers or whatever it is. Yeah, they talk about squiggly careers. Well, mine's a bit like spaghetti junction. It's like a complete mess. Imagine that tin of spaghetti and just like throwing it down. So I have I know why I got here, but it's been a bit of a journey. And I don't really think that it's not. It wasn't planned. None of it was planned. And I think that what I've done is, when something happened, I see my life as a series of little tiny adversaries or challenges, and it's how you react to those and not let them get you down and just keep on going. So I think that's how my life has really panned out, because I had no idea 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I was going to be here, or even like 30 years ago. So very briefly, lovely childhood. Moved around lots. Can't remember much about my childhood, but we moved around lots with my dad's job. And I think I was always, me and my sisters, we were always the new kids at school. We had a funny surname. My surname was McElveen, so we had a Scottish surname, but we didn't have a Scottish accent. We lived in Northern Ireland. We lived in Birmingham. We lived around in sort of Reading area. We always had this dodgy accent. So it kind of got me used to being the new kid on the block. And that's why I sort of love people. I love change, trying out new things. Yeah, school, bombed out school. I wanted to be a vet, wasn't clever enough to be a vet. Loved animals, just not clever enough. Did a little bit of hotel work like most people do, and I think it's very important that everyone does.
Yeah.
Went to agricultural college, so ended up going to agricultural college to early 20s. I thought I was very mature. I was a mature student, but I wasn't very mature. Went to agricultural college to study business and accounts, but you had to do some practical duties with it as well. So you had to like do the milking, the calf rearing, sheep shearing, you name it. You had to do practical duties, and I loved them, absolutely loved them. I've always been like a sort of outdoorsy sort of girl. So I left college with a distinction, and instead of wisely using my qualification, I ended up chasing after some boyfriend and going up north near where you are.
Yeah.
And I got a job on an outdoor pig farm, and yeah. So relationship ended going, you know, what's it? It inevitably crashed and burned. Came back home with a dog and cat in tow, I think, at that time. Back to parents, and I got a job on an indoor pig farm. Now, indoor, they're very different. So if you think domestic cat and feral cat,
yeah,
and how different they are, outdoor pigs are quite wild. So yeah, sorry, I got that the wrong way around. I got a job on an indoor pig farm, and then I moved to the outdoor pig farm. Yeah, that's the way, yeah, where it came. So I went and worked outdoors with pigs. And I got attacked twice by different sows. So they're quite protective. I don't know if you know much. Do you know much about pig farming?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, okay. So I worked with a guy called Brian a lot of the time, because I think I was about the only girl. There might have been one other girl, but I worked with Brian, and I was the smallest. Like, as being females were a bit smaller, and the outdoor pig farms. Sorry, I'm moving my hands.
Yeah, that's all right, go for it.
They got like the arks, the big arks that they sit in, and so when they have their young, they get quite protective, like we all do about our kids. And I always used to, because I was the smallest, used to have to like get the sow out. And then you used to have to go in and check all the little piglets were okay, and do all this sort of treatment that you needed to do. So when a piglet, I don't know if they still do this now, so I'm talking quite a few years ago. So when a piglet was first born, you used to go in, and they've got really sharp teeth. Now pigs have got really strong jaws, so like they can really crush your arm. So with sharp teeth, that's kind of lethal. So what you go in is you go in with a pair of pliers and you cut their teeth, the sharp bits off.
Oh wow.
I know. And then the other thing you do is you chop half the tail off as well, because they've got really long tails. You're like, you know, the real curly long tail. So you chop the tail off as well, because if they get hold of it and eat each other's, they chew, you know, when they're bored, they chew each other's tails like kids do. They play and they pulling pigtails, yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
And that's where it all, like, they chew on the tails, and then they start bleeding, and then it all gets a bit messy. So you chop the tails off, chop the teeth off, and we used to give them an injection of iron, and there was another injection, I can't remember that was. So if you can imagine yourself as being a newborn piglet, and I come into your little warm house, we've chucked your mother out. My mate Brian is keeping mum at bay, holding a board to keep her at bay to get at me, and I'm there, and I pick up each piglet. There's about sort of, I don't know, 12, 14 of them. Do their teeth, do their tail, give them a couple of injections. There's going to be a bit of squealing.
Yeah.
And twice, Brian let the pig in.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up in the corner of the ark, stuck in the corner with a big pig with like big going, and they bark when they're really cross. They go like, oh my God, I don't know why I just did that. Yeah. It still frightens me now. So that happened the first time, and she ate all the way up my arm, because I'm trying to do this and like protect myself, and she got hold of my arm, ate all the way up my arm. I ended up in A&E. went back to work after that, and then we used to wean them. We used to send them up to Bristol. So when they were 3 weeks old, we'd send them up to Bristol. So we'd have to creep out at 4 o'clock in the morning when all the pigs were all still asleep. And we'd quietly go down with our tractor and trailer, and then we'd hop out and we'd rattle the food things. So the mums would come out, the babies would all still be sleeping in their little huts. And yeah, mum would come out to have some food. Brian again, he'd put his board across. I'd get into the hut and then pick up each piglet one by one and give them to the person on the trailer. So we'd nick them basically from the mums.
Oh wow!
And put them on the trailer because we were going to take them up to Bristol to fatten them up. Anyway, Brian again. I don't know whether he was half asleep or he had something against me, but the sow got back in. And I can remember running out of that hut with this sow chomping away, chasing at me. And I just jumped into the trailer with all the piglets. And I just said, that's it, never again. And I lost my nerve. You know, when you like, I don't know, if you stood on if you don't like heights or something and you're stood on somewhere and you get that really sick feeling.
Yeah.
And I used to get that every time the pigs would do this barking noise because I think they were coming after me.
Yeah. So I mean, do you get that same feeling when you meet anybody called Brian as well?
I've known quite a lot of Brian, and I've often thought about having a cat called Brian, but no, I quite like Brian.
Yeah,
I quite like the name Brian.
Wow. So I do have to say, Stella, that's the first time that anybody has ever said to me, you've got to get your sows out. That's the first time that's been quoted on the podcast, which I think I might get into a t-shirt. I think that would be an amazing t-shirt. So when do you still spend any time with pigs now? No, I don't dislike them as much as I used to. No, but I still get that feeling. Yeah. So okay, right. So let's just pass that feeling just for a minute. So you were sat in the back of a trailer with all these little piglets that have had the teeth chopped, the tails chopped, and they were being. They had that done at birth. This was 3 weeks on. Oh, okay. So but they've still got short teeth and short tails, and now they've just been nicked from the mum. And then you thought, okay, this isn't for me. This. Where do you go next? Where do I go next? Well, by this time, I met husband number one, and I think I hadn't had Jess then, my daughter, but yeah, I ended up working at the donkey sanctuary, which is down in East Devon, in Sidmouth. From pigs to donkeys. Yeah, I know, but I didn't work like hands-on with the donkeys. I worked in the transport department, but yeah, so I don't know how I managed to do that. It's just one of those things. Yeah. Yeah, so I was with husband number one, and I had my daughter Jess and worked at the donkey sanctuary, so I must have left the dog. So I was then like a full-time mum, and by the time Jess was about 3, marriage was pretty rubbish, and I would say I was definitely 80% blame to my husband's 20. I don't think you could always apportion blame just to one person, but I was definitely the 80%. Wow. I just don't think it was I learned so much from it, but it just wasn't me. So anyway, that led to my sort of second adversity. So my first adversity was definitely getting the pig and having, because I thought I was my career to me was farming. It was, I loved it. Yeah. But then I realized I couldn't do it and lost my nerve. So yeah, when the marriage broke up, I ended with no home, small child, and I just had a dog at the time, Stanley, I think. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I believe in fate. So I believe that things happen for a reason. But I also believe that we make our own fate. So, you know, something's going to happen, whether it's good or bad to you. And my grandmother always said, you know, well, that's fate. But I also think that we can it's what we do with our fate that makes it. Yeah. So I don't know.
kind of had no job, and I ended up sort of pulling together bits of money and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So I learned quite a lot from failed marriage, learned what not to look for in a husband if I was going to have another one. Moved on, and I was approached by a friend of mine, and she said they wanted me to type up it was like an electoral roll. It was the millennium, so everyone was like getting really excited about the year 2000, weren't they? And she wanted, they were doing a village project, and she wanted me to type up the electoral roll, because at some point in my career, my father had sent me to secretarial college so I could type, because he said that everybody needs to learn to type. You can always fall back on typing. Right. Which is very good advice. So I ended up typing, because they were going to pay me a small cash sum for it. So I was a strapped single mum, so I was going to pretty much do anything for my small cash sum. So I typed up this electoral roll, and ended up going to collect my small cash sum from the local landlord, who ended up becoming husband number 2, and who I'm still married to. Very happy that I'm still married to husband number 2. So yeah, and that was kind of like another little bit of fate, and that kind of threw me into the pub world. So ended up getting married. We worked together for a while first off, ended up getting married, and I fell to pub duck to water, really. I just loved it. Paul had been there since he was born, so his parents had the pub, and he'd been there since he was born. So he's in partnership with his parents, but they sort of semi-retired. They moved out when we moved in, and the pub went to strength to strength. We were like, I would say we were just flying high. We won awards. We won tentative pub of the year. It was like the Oscars of the pub world. So we went up to London Houghton. Clive Anderson, I think, presented us with an award. We won Green Pub of the Award because of all the stuff that we were doing to try to, at that time, save the planet with all of our waste. Yeah, we had really great plans for the pub. Yeah. But his parents, having been there like 45 years, I think by this time, just didn't, they were sort of sleeping partners, more or less. So they still had influence. So it was with real great sadness that we had a bit of a fallout, and family and business sometimes don't work out, and we left. So I suppose that was another bit of a blow, really, a bit of an adverse, because that was our home and that was our income for both of us. And Jess, I think, was probably about 7 or 8 at the time. So, we had a child, we had a couple of dogs and a couple of cats, and, so, yeah, we were kind of like, what should we do now? We rented a house. We both started working self-employed. As I started working doing gardening, so I love gardening, so I could flex that around Jess.
So can I just stop you there, Sally? Just for 1 minute, right?
It's a long way from coaching, aren't we?
Yeah, and this is so you've gone from from agriculture, from pigs to donkeys to the pub, via 2 marriages and a lot of pets. What strikes me as well is, so there's two ways I want to go with this. Is one, you've got a really positive outset and a positive outlook on everything, and I guess my first question is, have you always had this positive outlook and outset, or is it something now that you can just do when you're looking back? Question number 1, and I'll ask you the second question after this answer.
I probably didn't recognize that I had a positive outlook, but yeah, I think I've always had a drive to just do stuff and do it the best of my ability. So I always go into everything with thinking, I'm going to a marriage, going to a job with all that enthusiasm, and thinking that I'm going to give it, I always give everything like 110%. So whether that's a positive outlook on, I don't really know. So I never go, no one goes into a marriage thinking it's going to fail, and hopefully not many people go into a job thinking, I'll just do this for a little bit and then I'll bum out of it. So yeah, I suppose that's where my positivity comes. And when things happen, I just see it as another challenge. Like, when I've lost my home, it's like, right, what can we do? And I can remember looking for a house after we left the pub, and Paul said to me, well, I'm not going to live there. And I said, well, why not? We can live there. Doesn't really matter. We'll just live there. We'll do stuff. And it's always been, it's been more looking at the things that you can do rather than the things that you can't do. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. And when you gave that answer, you said you used the word stuff. You always like, so you said no matter what it is, or I can't remember exactly what you said, but you used to describe everything that you do is like stuff, like so it's like so random and so your career has been so random and so varied. And this is what we've got to so far, and we're still nowhere near coaching yet. We're just touching on gardening. But did you know what you wanted to do before you did it, each of these different opportunities, or is there something that you saw that just pointed, or did you just think, oh, well, sod it, I need to do this and I'm just going to do it?
Sometimes I actively went out and found things that I wanted to do. So they'd piqued my interest, or I'd seen somebody doing them, or I'd had a conversation. And other times they get presented to you and you hadn't actually thought about it, and you just think, why the hell not?
Yeah.
And a lot of those, a lot of my life's been around the sort of why the hell not? I'll give that a go. I reckon I can do that. Especially with the gardening, you know, I'd only ever gardened for myself, and only ever been part of, my dad was a really, really keen gardener. He loved his garden, but I hadn't done it as a business, or, you know, I didn't necessarily know all the plant names or anything, but I can remember when I started doing my gardening, and I ended up, I worked full time. I worked around Jess's school hours. But when I can remember going home each night, and I still got it. I've got this like book that my dad gave me about gardening, that you could like A to Z of all the plants, and I used to like devour it. And I was like, I want to know every single plant there is. I want to help my clients that I had, so that I could do the best gardening for them. And I suppose that's how I go into everything. Is like and I never really saw it at the time, but as it was like that hunger to know stuff, know what I was doing, so that I could probably be the best that I was.
Wow. No, amazing. So that's gardening. Where is it next?
Well, gardening, so that I was probably been doing that for about 2 or 3 years, and then one of my friends from agricultural college, we were going to set up a little market gardening business, because at that time, like, there were car boot sales coming out, and we were growing stuff from seed, and we were going to set up this market gardening and start selling stuff from like our homes and that. And I had a serious hockey injury, so basically I just trashed my right knee. Like my kneecap, where it sits on the front, wasn't sitting on the front anymore.
Oh wow! It wasn't nibbled by piglets, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was my own competitive sports instinct, that I was only even in a practice. I wasn't even playing a game. Wow. And I went sliding across this all-weather pitch, and my knee went, that bottom part of my leg went one way, and my knee went the other.
What is it? So, sorry, Sally. What is it that gives you your drive?
I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know. I've never really wondered what gives me my drive. I just want to do the best that I can in anything that I do, really. And I don't think that's an answer, is it?
It could constitute as an answer, but it's not the, yeah. So the reason why I asked the question is because some people are like, have got this belief that you've got to find your passion, and then if you find your passion, then your purpose will come, and then that'll give you your motivation, and then you're aware because you're doing stuff you love. But what you've just articulated so far throughout your career is irrelevant of what it is, and bloody hell, it's random. Irrelevant of what it is, you have given everything your best, and you've driven for it, and you've not wanted to fail. You've just put your knee out in a practice match at hockey. You were eaten by piglets and all of this stuff. So I'll just ask you, where does this drive come from? How have you got this drive instilled in you?
I don't know. I'd like to think it was from my parents, and I can remember going, looking back, you know, there were lots of times where I felt I let my parents down, but I really always wanted to do the best for them. So everything, you know, even when I was at school, but then getting jobs, or you know, if I brought a boyfriend home, I wanted them to be proud of me, to like what I was doing, and be able to just say, God, look what Sally's doing. You know, it was definitely around wanting to do the best for my parents. And I suppose as I grew older, it then became wanting to do the best for I don't know, it gives you a sense, it gives me that sense of purpose, because I can't imagine, that's when I was in it, we'll get onto the HR world, but I could never really imagine myself as being one of these people that just got up and went to work and didn't really mind whether they had a good day, and it was just going to work, and then you come home and you just did the same thing. It was, I have to do the best that I'm going to do, whatever I do, because that's what makes me happy, I suppose. If I'm doing that, if I'm not doing the best that I can do, I feel that I'm letting myself down, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I would like to explore it, but I mean, we're midway through the story, aren't we, so far? So, so carry on. So we're still up to the gardening, and you just mentioned HR. Is there a big leap between gardening and HR?
Well, there's a little bit of a break. So obviously, I then damaged my knee. I couldn't walk properly for about 6 months on it, and I couldn't drive. So I mean, it wasn't like a break. So what happened? My kneecap basically went away from the front of my knee. So I ended up, and I don't know how I did this. This is another thing. I don't know. I don't know how I got this job. I don't think, actually, it's not a job. So I was stuck at home, but we didn't have any. Well, Paul was earning money, but we had loads of bills, and we weren't earning a lot of money, so we had bills to pay. And I ended up getting a job at what was a local feather factory. You know, you're going to laugh at this. It's a feather factory, and they make, like, you know, on like the RAF, like the military things, that they've got like little feathers on their hats.
Oh yeah.
Not their hats. They're not cats, are they? They don't wear hats. They wear like berets.
Yeah.
You were expecting me to go into HR, weren't you? Yeah. And they make these little feather things. Well, I started off because you could do it at home, and so Paul used to go and pick up the stuff for me because I couldn't drive, and then he'd bring it home, and I'd be sitting there with my leg up on the sofa, and I used to make these feather things. Now, I wasn't very good with the feather things, so they ended up putting me on bending pins, because to make the feather things, you have to have a pin to tie your feathers to. And it does sound a little bit simplistic, but there was a skill to it, and I got really good at it.
That doesn't surprise me based on what the conversation that we've just had.
So basically, I'd get a little piece of metal, which is like a long piece of metal like this, and they'd deliver hundreds and thousands of them. Paul would go and pick them up, and we had this like wooden machine that you have to bend it round, and you had to, like a handle, you bent it, and you had to do it all very intricately and at the right sort of spacing and everything. And I'd get through hundreds of these in a day, and we called it our pin money, because it basically kept us going. It put food on the table, so we had our pin money.
Wow.
So I did that probably, I don't know how long I did that for. Must have been around about 6 months or so. And over the sort of year that my leg was sort of, and that I was going and seeing people, and I got my operation, my leg was getting on the way. So I thought, right, I need to get a proper job. And I ended up getting a job at a school, and I don't know why they employed me, because I had no experience, but I must have done something at the interview. So they employed me, and Jess was just starting secondary school, so that way I thought, well, I can, you know, fit it around her, and I can still be around for Jess. So I got a job in reception, and within about a year, I suppose, I was promoted internally. So I applied, so I was successful in getting this internal promotion. I ended up with managing my own team, and I noticed a gap in their HR provision. So it was a state school, so they didn't have much of an HR provision. And I kind of ran with it. So I don't know, I persuaded the leadership team to fund me and give me the time to put me through my HR degree. And I suppose by the time I left there in 2013, I had a postgraduate degree in HR management, and I was an integral part of the leadership team. And I can't tell you how I did that, but I think it was probably just because I just gave it my all, and just really enjoyed it. I love the people I was working with. By this time, there was a switch around here, because as you can tell, the last lot didn't really have any, there was no sort of focus to where I was going. And so I became quite ambitious once I started working in this more sort of like serious world of work. I became quite career driven. And I realized as I got, it was Sidmouth College that I was working at, and it was a state school. And there was nowhere I could go. So I got my HR degree, and I was like, hey, I'm the big I am. I know, you know, I can rule the world and that sort of thing. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to leave because I can't get promoted here anymore. There wasn't anywhere for me to go because I didn't have any teaching qualifications. So there was only so far you could go. So it was a real heavy heart. I left that job. That was the longest time I'd been anywhere. And I absolutely loved it. But I didn't think the world was my oyster. I thought, because I'd never had a degree before, I thought, yeah, I'm really clever now. I can go out and do stuff. No, it was quite a hard blow because nobody wanted to give me a job. They looked at my past career and thought, who's she?
Yeah. So just a quick question again, Sally. So we've identified that your journey has been one that's been full of drive, and then you've just added the word career driven. At this point, where at the time when you've got your degree, it's changed from driven and doing every job the best of your abilities, irrelevant of the job and randomness that we've just spoke through. And then you've got a degree, and then it's become career driven. Was it the degree that made you career driven, or was it something else?
I don't know. I don't know what it was that made. I always regretted, well, regret's not the right word, because I bummed out of school and didn't go to university, and a lot of my friends did and got their degrees then. They always felt like I could have done that, and maybe if I had done that, I wouldn't have had that sort of strange 10, 12, whatever, how many years of weirdness that I had beforehand. And I think it was going back into education and realizing that I can do something other than all of this practical stuff that I can do. Not that I didn't love doing all the practical stuff, but I could apply my brain in different ways. Yeah. And I suppose I then started mixing, you know, I was then part of leadership teams. I was part of, you know, I was studying with other HR managers, you know, I was in a different environment. And I think it came to me that there is other stuff I could do out there, and I want to be the best at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, I did then. I couldn't get a job, so I left. I did leave. I did get a job, but I left Sidmouth College, which was a well-paid job, permanent job, very secure, managing my own team, part of a leadership team, and I took a job as an HR administrator on a temporary contract.
How did that feel?
I was excited. It's a really, yeah. When I first started trying to look for jobs, and I didn't even get interviews, and people wouldn't look at me, and I was thinking, yeah, I got my degree, look, come on, I can do this, and no one would look at me, and then it kind of dawned on me that I was going to have to. Everyone kept coming back to me saying, oh, you haven't got any experience in the corporate world, you don't know what business is all about, you know, we can't employ you, you've only worked in a school. And I was just thinking, that seems really unfair. But I just kept applying for stuff, and then I suppose I lowered my expectations. And I was thinking, okay, because I started applying for HR manager jobs, you know, at that point, thinking because I'd been basically doing that role at Sidmouth College.
Yeah.
And even more so, and so I thought that was where I'd go in at my entry level. And when I started to get those jobs, then I started going down to like sort of HR advisor, and I didn't get those jobs. And then I was like thinking, well, I'll just have to lower my bar. So that's what I did. I just lowered my bar, and I couldn't even get a permanent job. So I took a risk. And took this job as an HR administrator at RNS. It was out at RNAS Yeovilton. It was for Babcock, and within 2 to 3 months, my job was at risk of redundancy because Babcock lost the contract to Carillion or somewhere like that. I can't remember. There was like they lost the contract, and so basically we were all at risk of redundancy, and I'd only just joined, and so I was going to be first out.
Yeah.
So that kind of started a series of me doing a number of HR roles. And if anyone looks at my, on my LinkedIn, they'll see that I've got a lot of HR roles. And I just did that to get as much exposure and experience as possible in all the sectors while I climbed that ladder. And that was my drive, because I'd been told that you needed that experience. You need experience in the corporate, you need experience in different industries, different roles. And so I had no idea where that ambition came from. I was going to be like HR director by the time, I don't know what age I would have been, but I was in my 40s now, and it felt like time was running out. So I needed to make something of myself. And I don't know where that came from, because looking back now, I can't see that being important to me. But at the time, it must have been important to me. Yeah. A big part of that was I'd lost my sense of belonging. So when I was at Sidmouth College, I belonged. I was, I talk about part of the tribe or whatever it is, I was part of that. I was part of that. Everybody knew me. I knew everybody else. I felt like I belonged. And in all of these other HR roles, I didn't feel I belonged. So there was that restlessness. There was the restlessness of not feeling like I belonged, but there was also the feeling that I had to get up to the top of this ladder, whatever happened. I don't know. And I also was battling with that need to think that I needed to know it all. So, and I hear this now a lot still from, in groups that I've been in with HR, is that they talk about it as imposter syndrome. Now, I didn't feel like that at the time, but I just felt I needed to know everything. And I wouldn't, or I couldn't do my job well. And that is absolutely crazy, thinking that you could know everything. And I always thought it was a real failing of mine that I didn't know everything. So there we're kind of nearly up to present day. So if we just go back to, we're in 2021, aren't we? Yeah, I've had to go through a bit of a journey there. So if we go back to last year, 2020, I was in an HR manager role, and I was on I had left a permanent job because I'm very values driven, and something was happening within my HR manager role, and I decided I wanted to leave. And I was in this maternity cover role, and I'd already I was really getting quite, I suppose I think your intuition, we talk about intuition, but you get to know yourself as you grow older. I don't think I know I didn't know myself at 20s, 30s, even 40s, I was much different. Yeah. So I knew something wasn't right. And I'd kind of like thinking, well, I'm going to leave the HR. So I'd already resigned, thinking I was going to leave my maternity cover contract early. And only to have COVID. I'd resigned, and I was planning on leaving, I think at the beginning of March, and then I think on the 17th, something came out on the 17th of March about COVID, and then it was like we all need to start working from home for a little bit or something. I can't remember what it was, and we didn't have a CEO at the time. It was only a small organisation. We didn't have a CEO. We'd recruited one, but he wasn't due to start in April 2020, and I was part of. There was this very small exec team which I was part of, and I just thought, I can't leave everybody in the midst of this well, I didn't even know, we obviously never knew it was a pandemic then, but there was just so much to do in terms of working from home and making sure everybody was okay and all of that stuff. And so I rescinded my resignation and said, look, I'll stay on, I'll support you. So I did. And then, yeah, I don't regret that at all. And so for the next 3 months, like everyone else, I worked from home. And very much part of my role, and well, it wasn't part of my role, but it's what I did, was I was in contact with people daily. I was phoning them up, I was checking on their mental health, I was getting them resources, just being that person to talk to for a lot of people, because a lot of people really struggled in those early few months. At the same time, running the day-to-day business of HR, in doing the induction of a new CEO into the organization and all of the changes that come with that and all of the insecurities and uncertainties that come with that. And I think by May, June time, I wasn't in a particularly good place. Mental health wise, I was not in a good place. Outwardly, you would think I was fine. And I was like on like big health kick. I was running every day and I was telling everyone all my daily habits and how good everything was and how to look after yourself. And, I was exercising and I was in touch with everybody, but nobody checked in on me. That I had no one at work checked in on me really. Yeah. And I kind of thought, there's got to be more. So I called a meeting with the exec team and I said, I need to discuss the end of my contract, because I obviously been in HR, I would normally do that for other people. Yeah. I'd say, right, we need to discuss the end of their contract. And I was thinking, well, this is me. I need to discuss the end of my contract. I'll have to call the meeting then, I think, about me. So I put a meeting in the diary and I kept pushing for it, and I got this meeting in, and they were just really surprised because they asked me to stay on, and I said, well, I'm going to leave at the end of my contract. I'm sorry, I'm going to leave, and that's where I'm at. I need to do something else. So yeah, I left, and that felt like, whew, yeah, that felt good. Felt really, really good. And I suppose at that point, I decided that I was going to train to be a coach. I'd always probably been informally coaching in my HR role, and I think you just do, but you don't necessarily realize that you're doing it. Yeah. I'd been in a couple of coaching workshops in a previous organization. I'd done a 2-day workshop with the exec team, and I'd done some NLP training, so practitioner training in business. So I knew I was going to train to be a coach, and we'd set aside a bit of savings for me to have this time out. And so I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. And then within a few weeks, I started getting like really anxious and like, oh, what should I do? I'm not working. This is the first time in my life I have not done anything. And it felt really, really weird, really strange. I think I missed the connection. I missed having a purpose of getting up in the morning and all that sort of stuff. So I took a temporary job working for a drug and alcohol service. So
I thought your career changing had stopped at that point and we were just about to get to shine coaching. But oh no.
We're going drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, it's what you've needed after this long journey.
So yeah, and it was a local organisation in Exeter, and I've always admired them and wanted to work for them, and just the service that they provide is brilliant for people that need it. Yeah. And I felt like I said lots of people went through that in 2020 about that need to want to give back and do something, and I was back like I took this job and earning £10 an hour or something, which is crazy after what I'd been doing, but the money side to me wasn't at all important. It's never been a driver. Even when I was going up the HR ladder, the drive was not the salary. The drive was something different. It was me, it was internal. Yeah. So I took this job working this drug and alcohol service. And again, within probably in a few months, I thought I knew quite a bit about drugs and alcohol. I don't. Being in a pub, I thought I knew everything there was to know about alcohol. And drugs, I thought I knew a bit about them, but I knew nothing about. And it's not just the drugs now; it's the whole. It's this. Everyone's got that reason. No one chooses to go down that route. So yeah. There was so much to learn, and so much. I got back into that HR head that I need to know everything, and I was never going to know everything. So, and I was ending up working full-time for them, but doing it over 4 days, and then realizing that I was actually paying lip service to my coaching training. So, which is what I wanted to do, because I was thinking that my coaching, that it would like work alongside. So the sort of people skills and coaching skills, because it's a lot of it is around about changing, you know, having a goal, you know, whether you've got drugs and a drug or alcohol addiction, you've still got a goal to come off it.
Yeah.
I thought they would work quite well, but again, I got caught up in the like, I need to know everything about drugs, I need to know everything about alcohol, I need to know all the stuff. And then I was thinking, well, I've got to do my coaching, which I've invested money and time in, and that's what I really want to do. So I decided and I needed to do this. So in January 2021, I said to the Drugs and Alcohol Service, I said, I'm going to focus on my coaching. I've got to give myself that chance, because this is what I really want to do. So yeah, we are here. We're at Shine Coaching. So yeah, I have been. And I don't know where I went through this mindset shift. And I think it was through my coaching training, because even when I was working in drugs and alcohol, I had this feeling, and when I was in HR, that I had to, even if I think about when I talked to you about the book and gardening, I had this feeling that I had to know everything in order to do a good job. And I had to do it on my own. So my mindset, I keep saying mindset shift, my mindset shift has changed, and I don't know when it happened. So now I am so excited that I have so much to learn, and I don't know who can help me, and I'm going to ask lots of people to help me do it. And that is what happened in the last year. And I don't know when it happened.
Wow. And
that's been the most wonderful thing for me, is that I'm loving coaching, but I'm not thinking I need to know it all.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited about how much I can learn. And that's where the shift has happened.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing that as well. The whole journey there. I used to think that, and when I start some of my talks, I say I've had the most random journey that I know to get to where I am today, because I've had a bouncy castle business, I've DJ'd and blah 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 blah. I don't think I can say that anymore, because I think you might have had the most random journey of anybody that I actually know. You started the podcast as well, Sally, by saying you didn't really have a story to tell, and I think 50 minutes later, I think. Yeah, you know, it's all right. You don't have to apologize for telling your story. 50 minutes later, I think you've got plenty of a story to tell, with plenty of lessons in there as well. So if you were to give yourself a piece of advice from, say, just before you started working in the very first pig farm, before you went working to the very first pig farm, whether that was the indoor or outdoor, I've forgotten. What would you get? What advice would you give to yourself?
I don't really know. I mean, I'm thinking of all those things, like, you know, if I was to look back on it, it's about getting to know me. And it's a bit like what your friend says, is just be really comfortable with me. And I don't think I've not really been a comparing sort of person. You know, there's that saying about comparison being the thief of all joy, or comparinitis. You know, it's about living your own life. And I think I have lived my own life. But I suppose my bit of advice would be to me, because my parents had my dad joined the army, but then he ended up working for Shell. But my mum knew she wanted to be a teacher, and I thought I had to know what I wanted to do when I was 18, or even before then. And because I couldn't be a vet, it all went, I won't swear, it all went completely up in the air, right? So, and that's where my journey then started on this thing. So I suppose my bit of advice is to people and to myself is, don't worry if you haven't got a big goal. So it's finding out what, and that actually now you come to think about it, I've got a workshop I've got planned, but it is finding out about what success looks like to you at the moment. So lots of people, I'll ask that to my coaching clients, what does success look like to you? And quite often people look like quite far in the future, what success might look like to you. But I think you need to know what success looks like to you in the here and now, and what happiness is in the here and now, and what's important to you in the here and now. Because I think if you have all of those things in your here and now and make the best of them, the other stuff will come. So the big goal will come, and be prepared to know that whatever your goal is, it's going to change. So yeah, it's definitely looking more at the here and now. Try not to look too far ahead in the future, because I think maybe I did that, although I did throw myself in. But it's, yeah, my advice would be, don't worry about the future, because it's going to come and hit you like a whatever, really, and you'll deal with it.
Like a pig out of a Brian's gate. Well, whilst we're talking about the here and now, Sally, what are you having for your tea?
What am I having for my tea? It will be something with leftover roast chicken.
I thought you were going to say pork then.
No, I roasted a chicken yesterday, so it will be something with leftover roast chicken, and yeah, maybe a risotto or some pasta. Also, I like creating stuff out of nothing, so I like nothing better. None of my meals are the same. If I wasn't coaching, I would cook. I love entertaining, so that's one of my biggest loves. I love nothing better than having a party at home and doing loads of cooking up a storm and making people. So I love looking in the fridge and thinking, oh, what the hell can I make? And so my husband never gets to eat the same meal twice.
Yeah.
And it's just whatever's in the fridge.
It's a bit like your jobs, isn't it? You've never had the same job twice.
Oh, you found a pattern here.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, amazing. Oh no, honestly, Sally, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. If people wanted to know more about you, where would they go? What would they do? What would they find?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, so Sally Chapman Shine Coaching. You can find me on shinecoaching.org.uk. I have today just launched a new group coaching program with a colleague of mine, a fellow coach called Kate Ashmore from Rebel HR. So we're providing a group coaching program online. At the moment, it's fully funded, so places are free. It's over sort of 3 months, well, October, November, and it's basically giving something to the HR leaders in our world, because they've been through so much in the last 18 months, because both Kate and I have worked in HR, and we recognise how much that they give to other people. So it's just giving a little bit something back to them. So we're going to do some group coaching around that and give them some time and some space to think, and also to go away with some sort of, strategies and some actions to take back into their own workplace and develop themselves. So that's also on my website. But yeah, come along. I've got a Shine workshop coming out hopefully in the autumn, and I've got my one-to-one coaching that I'm doing. And I'm also starting to work for an local organisation called Nutruri, which is a social enterprise. So I'm going to work with them on a self-employed basis, doing partly with helping with the business, but also some coaching as well. And they're into weight neutrality. So they look at people's relationship with food and change how you have that relationship. So throw diets out the window. And it's all around sort of self-acceptance and non-judgment. Amazing stuff. I just want to say thank you again so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know that amazing journey that you've had, Sally, to get to that seat that you're starting today. So honestly, thank you so much for that. Good luck with everything that you've got going on, and hopefully I'll get to hear more about it in the near future. Yeah, thank you, Leah. It's been great fun, actually.
Cheers, Sally. Speak to you soon.
Okay, bye.